Jimmy Fallon stunned when Denzel Washington suddenly holds his breath after seeing this photo. Denzel Washington went still in a way that had nothing to do with the cameras. Not at the end of a question, not after a laugh. Midway through a sentence, his eyes dropped to the photograph on the desk in front of him, and every muscle in his body stopped moving at once. Jimmy Fallon watched it happen from 3 feet away and didn't say a word. 300 people in the audience watched a man they thought they knew become someone they had never seen before. It was a Wednesday night at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. The Tonight Show was running warm. The crowd had given Denzel Washington a standing ovation when he walked out, the kind that starts before a person even sits down, the kind that says, "We already know who you are." The interview had been easy, funny, the back and forth of 2 men who respect each other. Everything was flowing. Everything felt settled. The segment producer later said she'd worked in television for 19 years and never seen the room change the way it changed that night. Then, Jimmy reached under the desk and placed a photograph on the surface between them. Not a production still, not a press photo. A small, square photograph, the kind developed from a drugstore roll of film, the edges slightly bent, the surface dulled by decades of handling. 2 people standing in front of a building. One of them was Denzel Washington, age 23. The other was an old man in a gray coat with his hand on Denzel's shoulder. Denzel Washington stopped breathing. His chest didn't move. His eyes locked onto the photograph, and his hands, which had been open and easy on the arms of the chair, closed slowly into stillness. His jaw set. Jimmy leaned forward and then stopped himself, because this was not the moment to speak. "Denzel," Jimmy said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was barely a word. Denzel Washington didn't answer. The entire studio froze. 300 people held their breath. Someone near the back thought he was having a medical episode. The band didn't move. For 5 full seconds, nobody in the room understood what they were watching. Was it recognition? Was it grief? He was 59 that year. Composed in the way only men who have spent decades being watched learn to be composed. And whatever was happening behind his eyes was something he had not planned for this evening. His voice barely above a whisper, but caught perfectly by his microphone. Denzel Washington said one name. Walter. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in 1968. Denzel Washington wasn't always Denzel Washington, 2-time Academy Award winner and the defining dramatic actor of his generation. In the summer of 1968, he was 13 years old, and the city of Mount Vernon, New York, was changing underneath his feet in ways he didn't yet have language for. His parents' marriage was ending. The neighborhood was loud with a kind of tension that adults explained away and children absorbed through their skin. He was a smart kid with nowhere particular to put it. His mother, determined to find him structure, enrolled him in the summer program at the Mount Vernon Boys Club on South Columbus Avenue. Because it was close, and it was supervised, and it was something. Walter Eugene Briggs ran the drama and public speaking program there. He was 64 years old, a retired civil court clerk who had spent his entire working life in the Westchester County court system and his entire private life in amateur theater. The kind that happens in church basements and school auditoriums, the kind that nobody reviews and almost nobody attends. He had been volunteering at the Boys Club for 11 years by the time Denzel Washington walked through the door. He had white hair, a gray coat he wore regardless of the season, and a habit of looking at whoever was speaking to him as though what they were saying was the most important thing happening anywhere in the world. Denzel Washington had never had a teacher who listened like that. The summer program ran 6 weeks. Walter ran it like a court proceeding, orderly, serious, Nobody spoke over anyone else. Everyone got their turn. He taught the boys to stand still, which he said was the hardest thing in performance and the hardest thing in life. He said most people talk to fill the silence because they're afraid of what the silence reveals. He said the ones who can stand in silence and let it work for them, those are the ones rooms turn toward. He made them recite. Not from scripts, from memory, passages he'd chosen himself. The Gettysburg Address, a James Baldwin essay, the opening of a Langston Hughes poem. He had them stand in front of the other boys and deliver the words not as performance, but as conviction. He said, "You are not an actor right now. You are a person who believes something. Say it like you believe it." Denzel was 13, in a room full of boys who were all pretending not to care, and he stood up and said the words, and something happened in his chest that he didn't know what to call. Walter Briggs pulled him aside after that session. Not to praise him, to ask him a question. He said, "Where did that come from?" Denzel said he didn't know. Walter said, "Find out. That's your assignment. Not the recitation, not the performance. Find out where that comes from, and when you find it, don't let anyone talk you out of it." He was 13. Nobody had ever given him an assignment like that. He went home that evening and sat at the kitchen table for an hour trying to locate the thing Walter had asked him to find. He couldn't name it. But he knew it existed, the way you know a room is in a building even before you've opened the door. That summer he showed up every session early. He watched the other boys. He watched Walter. He started to understand that Walter wasn't teaching performance. He was teaching attention. He was teaching the boys to be present in their own bodies long enough for something true to come out. On the last day of the program, Walter pulled him aside again. He said, "You are going to go somewhere with this. I don't know where. I don't need to know. I just need you to hear me say it once, clearly, from someone who has no reason to say it except that it's true. You have the thing. Now go find out what it's for." Denzel Washington was 13 years old, and it was the most serious conversation an adult had ever had with him. The summer ended. His mother enrolled him at Oakland Military Academy in 1969, and then Fordham University. And then the road opened the way roads do when you have both talent and the stubborn belief that the talent is worth something. He thought about Walter Briggs when he stood in his first professional audition. He thought about him the night he won his first Academy Award, standing at the podium in a room full of people who had finally confirmed what Walter had told him at 13 in a boys' club on South Columbus Avenue. He wrote a letter to the boys' club in 1999. They told him Walter Briggs had passed away in 1987. They had no contact information for his family. He thought he had lost the thread entirely. The photograph existed because a boys' club volunteer had brought a camera to the final session of that 1968 summer program and taken pictures of every boy with their instructor. The original prints had been filed in a cardboard box in a storage closet for decades. When the boys' club underwent a renovation in 2022, staff found the box. A young program coordinator recognized the name on the sign-in sheet from that summer. She did not have a way to reach Denzel Washington directly, but she knew someone who knew someone, and the photograph eventually found its way to a Tonight Show producer who understood exactly what she was looking at. The photograph was not shown to Denzel Washington before the taping. Walter Briggs had a son, Marcus, who was now 61 and worked as a high school principal in White Plains. The Tonight Show had reached Marcus 3 weeks before the taping. He had driven down from White Plains with a box of his father's things, the gray coat, a handwritten notebook full of the passages Walter had used in his sessions, a photograph of his own from that summer that showed the same two people from a slightly different angle. Marcus was told only that his father's work was going to be recognized. He was not told how. He was sitting in the fourth row when Denzel Washington said his father's name. Behind the scenes, Denzel Washington had made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. When the Tonight Show producer had contacted his team about the photograph 3 days before the taping, Denzel had said one thing: "Don't tell me when." He would know the photograph was coming at some point during the interview. He did not want to know the moment. He wanted it to land the way Walter Briggs had always said things should land. Without preparation, without armor, in the place where the real feeling lives. But this is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. Denzel Washington reached into his jacket pocket. He had not been asked to bring anything. Nobody on the production team knew he was carrying anything. He set a second photograph on the desk, beside the one Jimmy had placed there. It was smaller and more worn. The image almost faded to white at the center. A photograph of a boys' club classroom taken from the back of the room. 30 boys sitting in rows, and at the front of the room a man in a gray coat standing completely still, while a boy of 13 stood at the front and said words into the air. He had kept it for 46 years. "My mother found it in my room after I left for school," Denzel said. His voice had come back now, low and controlled. "She put it in an envelope and mailed it to me. She wrote on the back, 'Don't forget where the first one came from.'" He looked out at the audience. In the fourth row, Marcus Briggs was standing. Denzel Washington saw him and stopped. Jimmy Fallon, watching Denzel's face, turned to follow his eyeline. He saw the man standing in the fourth row, and without a word climbed down from behind the desk and walked to the edge of the stage. "Folks," Jimmy said quietly into his microphone, "I think we need to let this happen." Marcus Briggs walked forward down the aisle. He was carrying his father's notebook, the handwritten one, full of passages and notes from 30 years of teaching boys in church basements and school auditoriums and the boys' club on South Columbus Avenue. Denzel Washington stepped down from the stage. They met at the foot of the steps. Marcus held out the notebook. Denzel took it with both hands. He opened it to the first page and read something silently. His jaw moved once. He closed it. "He wrote about you," Marcus said. His voice was steady in the way voices go steady when they have been rehearsing steadiness for weeks. "There's an entry from August 1968. He wrote your name. He wrote, 'This one already knows. He just doesn't know he knows.'" Denzel Washington looked down at the notebook. "He never told me that." "He told me," Marcus said. "He talked about that summer for the rest of his life. He said one of them was going to carry it somewhere. He just didn't know which one. Why didn't he reach out? After the films? After the award?" Marcus smiled, small and quiet. "Because he didn't need the credit. He said the work was never about credit. He said the best thing a teacher can do is disappear into what the student becomes." Questlove set his drumsticks down on the kit behind him and stood up without being told. The director did not cut to commercial. The camera operator closest to the stage held the frame. Denzel Washington held the notebook against his chest with both hands, the way you hold something you are afraid of setting down. "I want her to feel like a person, not a moment," he had told the producer 3 days before this taping, talking about how he wanted the tribute to feel. He had meant Walter Briggs. He had not known Marcus existed. The standing ovation began in the middle of the room and moved outward like a wave until the entire studio was on its feet. Denzel Washington stood at the foot of the stage and let it happen, his hands still wrapped around the notebook, his eyes closed. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Walter Eugene Briggs passed away on a Thursday in November 1987 at the age of 83 at a hospital in Yonkers. He had no obituary in any newspaper. He was survived by his son, his daughter-in-law, and 41 years of boys whose names he had written in notebooks they never knew existed. Denzel Washington attended a small ceremony at the Mount Vernon Boys Club 6 weeks after The Tonight Show taping, where a room in the building was named for Walter Briggs. He sat in the back row through the speeches and came forward only at the end to say a single sentence. He said, "He told me to find out where it comes from, and I'm still looking, and I think that's the point." The notebook sits on a shelf in his office now, between two other books, the spine facing out. His assistants know not to move it. Some teachers finish the lesson. The great ones make you finish it yourself.